Hello, and welcome to Beyond Borders, a space where we break down barriers between people, technology, art, and mental health. Stay with us for open, thought provoking conversations that spark ideas, challenge perspectives, and bring us closer together.
Hello, and welcome back to the Beyond Borders podcast. My name is Pim, I'm the founder of Digitize, and as always, I'm here with Caroline, who is an artist, a creative and a weaver of stories, and of course, Franco, writer, mental health consultant, and the founder of the Real Talk Hub. Today's topic is going to be reaching artists in development and conflict zones, a very relevant topic for nowadays, and actually, a thing we want to light out and talk about. A big thing when it comes to conflict areas and development areas is that there's art everywhere, but very unnoticed. When you look at war or whatever it is, you see art on the walls, on the streets, in any kind and every kind. That's the thing that we want to light out today, and how can we reach the people who are in those areas? And that's why I really wanted to start with Caroline. What is your experience when it comes to the artistic expressions that you can see in the communities, and how do you see that they pressure them in these survival mode areas? And do they still be, or they still are in the Web3 community, or have they been very silent? And do we really need to light them out again?
It's an interesting question and a challenging one for me personally, Pim, because I haven't lived in an official conflict zone. I have experienced life under pressure, like many of us, communities that were struggling, people just getting by, and personally, a time in my life that was incredibly stressful and isolating. But if we're looking at Web3, I think what we see every day on the timeline of X, formerly Twitter particularly, is that whatever seems to be going on, art finds a way. And I think, from my own personal experience, that is what I've noticed in myself and in others. It just doesn't stop in those moments. It changes, it adapts, but it doesn't stop. For me personally, just sharing what happened a little bit, I started doodling during a time in my life that art wasn't really a daily part of my life. It's always been a part of my life, but not on a daily basis. But during a really challenging time for me, I started doodling with no particular direction, no particular plan. I wasn't thinking, I need to create something meaningful. It was more like I just need a moment where my mind's quiet. And that is what drawing gave me at that time. So I think sometimes, we talk about art and we talk about artists, but there's benefits to art because it gives a kind of mental stillness that we can't find when we're under pressure and in times of conflict, either personally or within communities or within our countries. I think I think art shifts, as I said at the beginning, and that's what happens in communities under pressure. There may be no fancy materials, maybe there's no light or light at certain times of the day. Maybe the art is made late at night or in between, finding times. But I suspect, like me at the challenging time I found, it becomes essential, a way to process what's going on or to hold on to something that still feels like yours. So I think at such times it's less about perfection, it's more about honesty. It's less about making something to show and more about staying connected to yourself and sometimes to each other, as communities. So I think when people are in survival mode, art doesn't disappear, it just becomes even more human. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and I think there's also a great bridge to Sprenko, who is very known with mental health, and actually ask him in the question, how do you see the function of art? Do you see it as a tool for resistance, but also for healing in this fragile environment? Or what is your opinion about that?
That's a good one. I think art has always been a form of therapy, as I like to describe it, and in zones where there's so much conflict, I would say privileged to have experience in that regard, and it can be not just a form of therapy, but a form of expression. You have graffitis on the wall, people sort of use art as a voice, you know. So it's a good way to express, it's a good way to connect, and it's a good way to sort of heal when, you feel you're making some sort of progress. Because in a very large way, in a lot of situations, in a lot of areas, in a lot of countries, art becomes the voice that gets the pain of the people out there for international support. So it's a very good way.
I definitely agree and think people should always do it. But the thing is, how can they do it? Will always be a question because even the simple things that for us are very reachable and always there, like the internet, might not be there for them, which can be difficult for digital artists. Definitely, if also the electricity is gone, or even their house is gone, or whatever the reason may be, there are many things in conflicts that actually disrupt the artist's mind and disrupt the tools that they have in their hands. So what I'm thinking, can we do to actually finish or let's say fix those infrastructural challenges for the artists that are there? Do you think we underestimate the connection that the artists have during those conflicts? What do you think, Caroline? Is there a way that we can fix it, or is it definitely more to the country itself in that are in conflict that need to fix those infrastructures?
Again, a difficult question, Pim. I think we often underestimate how layered these barriers really are, how difficult it is because we don't have a frame of reference ourselves for these things. So it's easy, isn't it, to talk about infrastructure, things like unstable internet, power cuts, limited access to secure platforms, and those are real, especially when borders are under pressure or when governments restrict communication or creative freedom. That kind of control can cut people off in ways we don't always see from the outside. So you're right, it's then about the country, isn't it? Whatever they're doing to support their people. And I guess it's more than art. It's bigger than art, isn't it? It's about infrastructure, light, heat, warmth, water, whatever it is. And then from that, art can flow. But I think it goes deeper than that. There are also invisible barriers, cultural ones that don't show up on the map. Things like fear of being misunderstood or a sense that their work won't translate beyond their community. I think sometimes we approach with good intentions, but without fully grasping the emotional weight or historical context behind somebody's voice. Even the way we try to reach out can sometimes carry unconscious assumptions, like assuming people want to be found or are in a position to safely respond. That's why I think sometimes listening and not just broadcasting matters so much. And I know Sprenko will have some brilliant insight here because that cultural layer is something I've learned to be really mindful of. It's not just about opening the door, it's about making sure it's a door they actually feel safe walking through. So there's some of that got to go on, I think, as we consider how we support people from conflict zones.
Definitely. And take the floor, Franco. You know a lot about this.
Yes, you both mentioned like very important things, to this conversation, and I like that we are highlighting this because a lot of artists are not heard. A lot of things need to be said, and like you spot on, power supply, internet access, and it's worsening by the day. But I think the beauty of it in the madness is the fact that still we have conversations like this. We have artists who are empowering each other, people who are not just collecting each other's works but projecting their voices out there through art. And for me, it's not exactly about the medium but the fact that the art and the voice gets out there. So I don't care if it's AI, I don't care if it's traditional art, I don't care if it's graffiti, I don't care if it's, anime. As long as the art gets out there and connects with somebody, I'm all for it.
Definitely. I think it's going to be definitely always difficult to see what the best approach is towards artists that are in those areas. Also for organizations, because how do you approach what do the artists want and how can we really help them? I think that's always a difficult question to be answered without knowing how the conflict is going, what the area looks like, what is missing, what is there. So I think that those things need some way to actually come towards the organizations or get the knowledge towards the organizations to see how we can help out. Can you share an example of a project or initiative that built a successful over time when it comes to these projects, Caroline?
Yes, I can. One stands out actually. But what I would like to say also is that trust isn't built through strategy alone. It's built through sincerity and it comes over time. So for me, one of the clearest examples I've seen actually is something Sprenko did with his ginger and lemon tea project in Web3. At first glance, it might look like just a creative NFT drop, but if you spend some time with it and the way Sprinko showed up around it, it becomes clear this wasn't just about selling art or selling an NFT. It was about inviting people in, the process, the vulnerability, the care. It all reflected someone who wasn't trying to impress, but trying to connect. And that's what trust needs, especially in fragile or underrepresented communities. It's not about logistics or infrastructure, although those matter, of course. It's about showing up without extractive intent, not dropping in with a solution, but entering with humility and curiosity. And I think when artists connect with artists, like what happened around Sprenko's project, it creates a kind of lateral trust that's hard to replicate top down. It's not an outsider supporting someone, it's a shared creative language, a shared emotional truth. And that goes further than any funding promise ever could. So I'd say we build trust not by asking, what can I give, but by showing up and asking, how can we walk this together?
Yeah, definitely. And do you think Spranko artist to art is going to be a very big beneficial towards going towards this goal?
Absolutely. And thank you for that compliment, Carolyn. I'm glad you resonate with it because, like the initiative was not to come in and come out and say I've dropped another collection or I have a project myself. Is to connect with artists, show people that there's a lot that we can do with our art. Wherever you are, wherever you're from, as long as you have the mindset to connect and not impress, you're all for it. Even some of the NFTs there are based on a friend, who was dealing with anger management. So it connects with people. People can look at the art and say, "Oh, I can feel like this." And it was very beautiful because at the time we had the talent bridge, spearheaded by the Web3 Wednesday community. And it was a great way to connect with more artists, connect with each other, connect with the type of art that we are creating, connect with the ways that we can help each other, connect with why we want to actually be in each other's lives and in projects and creative processes. So I think, like what you asked earlier, organizations, institutions can sort of amplify the voices of artists through not just saying, "Oh, how much do you need? What do you need? What can I do for you?" But going in there to understand the plight of the people, not just those who have massive followers or those who are influential, but people who are actually living the life of conflict. Connect with them. Just give them a platform to have their voices heard, and you'll be shocked how much we can do for each other as artists.
I absolutely agree. And that's the thing. We have done a project which is still not able to be announced, but where we actually contacting artists in conflict zone uh, to get more connections and connecting with them and see what we can do with them in the sense of we want your art to be somewhere and your voice. Is there anything arranged in your current community, and can we help creating that community? And in many cases, the answer is yes. We are doing things with our community, but it's not seen, or we have some limitations getting seen. And then in our cases, okay, how can we help? And because we really want to help, how big is the organization? How many artists are there? It doesn't matter if it's one, two, or three, or 100. We will help you get all those 100 art pieces or all those 100 voices and great minds somewhere where they want to be, telling their story and really telling the thing they want to tell or showcase, which definitely with artists is there's a big showcasing part, which I always really like. And I think with conflict areas or development areas, once those things are established, we can do a lot more. I mean, I think artist to artist or person to person is one of the big first steps that everyone needs to make. And not even if it's just a question, how are you doing, can actually develop into, oh, do you run any projects currently? And the answer might be yes, I just made this piece of art resembling this or this story. Oh, just let me share it to everyone. Get invited to a space, get invited to a call, get invited to an event possibly, and just tell your story. That's the thing that we are trying to achieve, and that's really great and also really appreciated. And when it comes to returns, it doesn't even matter. Not even close. We just want to help. We want to share those short stories and also get an insight on how the conflict looks and how other people can help. That's why we actually do this. And when it comes to that, Carolyn, have you ever seen any digital platforms or creators or whatever that look for collaborations like this or to enhance the visibilities of these artists in these zones?
Yes, but before we talk about that, I just want to say what you've just shared is amazing, and I'm so looking forward to learning more about this, what you're working on in this regard very soon. So thanks for sharing that. Um, I think we all see it every day on the timeline of X, like it or loathe it, it does connect people. And we see them collaborating artistically and living in conflict zones. And it's amazing. And I find it, incredibly inspirational and humbling because they keep going no matter what, no matter what is going on. So I think social media, we've got to be honest and say that it's completely changed the landscape. We're no longer reliant on traditional institutions or media to validate or broadcast creative work. Artists now can share what they're making, what they're feeling in real time and be seen by global communities they'd never have reached otherwise. That visibility is super powerful, not just for the artist, but for the rest of us. It challenges the dominant narratives. It reminds us, I think, that even in places facing unimaginable pressure, there's still creativity, there's still life. But the platforms themselves are just tools. What really matters is how we use them, how we show up in those spaces. I've seen artists collaborate across continents, build mutual support networks, even co create collections or exhibitions online that reflect their shared truths. And none of that would have been possible without platforms that allow them to bypass the gatekeepers in art. That said, I think we have to stay mindful. Not everyone has access to fast internet or the safety to post openly. So, as much as technology can bridge gaps, it can also highlight divides, and we need to design with that in mind. Tech uplifts, but it must be tech that also includes.
Definitely. And Spanker, do you think the technology that we have today, or what we will make, are those really solutions that can be accessible for everyone, or do they unintentionally exclude the people we're actually aiming for?
Yeah, I believe that there's a huge divide between tech that that serves and tech that seeks to reward, if I use that word. And I'm saying that because Carolyn's just made a beautiful statement. We should divide, we need to design with the intention, to uplift and, give visibility because, yes, social media is available to everybody, but a lot of people do not even see the need to keep creating because they don't feel seen, heard, or acknowledged. And we wonder why. The likes are not coming in, the comments are not rolling in, the shares are not coming in. But even if you want to take a step back, from that, I think it's important that the institutions, the designers, the devs, the platforms who are seeking to create, make it very accessible. Understand that it's not about how much you speak, but being able to speak and getting your voice out. And that's one of the reasons that I love platforms who make it possible for artists and creators to go on there for free, put your work out for free, irrespective of who you are, where you're from, and give access for artists to have a voice. Because at the end of the day, it's not about having an amazing piece of art that you can resell. Sometimes it's about connecting with somebody's story through a piece of art that you can resonate with. I recently found out about struggles in Kenya through an artist in Kenya that I collect his work from. Because he made a piece of art, I loved it, I could connect with it, and I'm like, yo, dude, what was the inspiration behind this? And he was like, I was going through this period and we currently have, I'm like, oh, wow. So imagine me looking in my wallet or having that piece of art on my wall. Every time I look at that, I remember him and the struggles in Kenya, and I can relate to that. And, be either inclined to support directly or indirectly. And we're speaking about it now in the podcast. Same applies to countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia, Sudan, name it, Iraq, Iran. There's a lot going on there. So I think we need to be intentional about the tools that we create and why we create them. Let's give room for more voices to be heard. If it's going to be in text, if it's going to be in art, if it's going to whatever form it may come. Let's make it easier for people to have a voice.
Absolutely. And what do you think about that, Carolyn? And what
I
are the
was just,
and what are
thank
the
you, Pim.
platforms?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the challenge, isn't it? This being seen, being heard by the people who are, putting the jigsaw together behind the scenes. It isn't always until things are rolled out that we realize what's missing. And I don't know, we've talked about it a lot. How do we do that, the mechanics of it? And I think it's probably a whole other podcast, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think, Caroline? What are the best programs or platforms that are accessible for everyone to actually start with? Where they can start, where they can showcase their story, where it's free, it's easy to access. When it comes to views, it's still usable, but it's not too much work, doesn't require too much of a good internet connection. What are the platforms that you will be searching for, and what other platforms you will be recommending?
I think the one that was recommended to me when I came into Web3 was X, formerly Twitter, because I think it is, rightly or wrongly, it's the home of Web3. We're all there. And that isn't to say that Web3 isn't spread across other platforms, that it is. But currently, it doesn't have a home of its own, does it? And I think it's something that we talk about an awful lot, but nobody yet has come up with a solution. And I see people, building social media platforms at the moment, but you just can't entice people across to them. So the normal suspects line up, don't they? We've got X, we've got Instagram. I see Facebook less relevant for Web3. I think there's a strong Web3 community, maybe not a cohesive community, but they're certainly there on LinkedIn. So those would be the kind of ones, the mainstream ones I would look at. And then to sort of keep an eye out for things that are being developed and see if you're prepared to support them. Because I think that's what will happen is somebody will create something, we'll go there and something will happen and then all of a sudden that will fly. We're not quite there yet, and there's several cooking, isn't there? There's Farcaster and I can't remember. Oh, Create Scene with an artist is developing that currently, but there's just not the traction currently. And sadly, if you go and you start off with something new and there isn't any traction there for you, you're not going to put your effort there. It's just human nature. We're already stretched thin across social media platforms. And so if you're looking where you put your time where you think the greatest return is going to be. It's a sad fact, but that's the way it is.
Definitely. And what about you, Franco? And do you also think that maybe like bigger programs like TV programs or blog posts or magazines should make this a regular topic for conversation?
Absolutely. And not just because you're the founder, but it's one of the reasons I easily gravitated towards what Digitize is doing. It was a very beautiful way to spotlight artists who would, in other case, not be seen or heard. So I believe that yes, galleries, magazines, not a lot of people watch TV now, but digital platforms need to start creating and designing with, the intention to give access. A lot of AI tools are available now, but I can tell you that 90% of them are subscribe, get a plan. Yeah, I get it. Everybody wants to, make money, revenue. You gotta, get money to run the wheels, but still, I think if we create platforms that make it easy for people to get on board, then we wouldn't struggle so much with onboarding people to Web3, would we? So I love platforms like Object. It runs on the Tezos chain. It's very affordable. You can get pieces of art there for like $2, $5. And I see a lot of African, American, Asian artists on there creating and just doling out pieces of art, sharing their voices, their lives, their stories on there, and it's beautiful. So I would 100% recommend Object, and there's Drip House as well. That's a good place. You can get 10,000 droplets for like $5. So it's a good place to start. And highly recommend those.
Great to hear, and probably will write them out for everybody to see later on. I think there was a great episode looking for getting more attention to people and artists that are in conflict areas, and I think that we really should focus on when these conflicts hopefully end soon, but we will still want to
Mm,
see all of that great art that was connected, was created during that period, and the people we connected with. I think it's a great initiative to connect with those people, ask their stories, and help where we can. I think that's a goal we all need to have and actually need
Mm-hmm.
to implement within our businesses or just in our social media connections that we have. If we can help anyone with this, even if it's just putting someone in a gallery, showcasing their art, retweeting a tweet, or sharing a post, we would love to hear it. And I think that's a great step forward for everyone to reach our goals and getting connected with people who actually need it. And that's way I want to end this episode. And thank you everybody for listening and see you on the next one.